All stories must have a beginning, and ours opens on the campus of Harvard University, where our two young...
Well, Paul, here we are after 4 happy years of college, and I sure hate to say goodbye.
Nor do I, Ed, but say, I only live 91 miles from here in Northampton, and you've never even seen the town.
That's right, but when you talk about the town, it sure must be someplace.
Gee, I'll say it is, and why don't you come up and see me sometime?
Well, you don't look like any Mae West to me, but I'll come up and see you anyway.
So Northampton was settled by white people officially in 1654, and from pretty early on it's been a musically progressive town.
We started playing in bands when we were like 14 and 15. We used to play at this place called the Honey Pot, which is like a spot down by the river, and we were in a band with a 32-year-old homeless guy. Super nice.
We met him on the street. We met a bunch of people just by playing on the streets in Northampton, and so that's how we joined a bunch of bands, and so that's I think how we started. As soon as we started hanging out downtown and playing music when we were 14, that's when we really became aware of how many other people were playing.
Dinosaur Jr., one of the first shows that they played locally was at Pearl Street. They opened for Jason and the Scorchers, and they were 10 minutes into their set, and people were screaming that their ears were bleeding, and the manager went and unplugged their amps, which was really too bad because I was really enjoying it. I couldn't see the show. I was downstairs checking IDs, but you could certainly hear it. It made the windows rattle. It was intense. And I was really digging it, but apparently the people who came to see Jason and the Scorchers were not digging it by any stretch, and they were leaving. So the management cut the cord on Dinosaur Jr. Where's Jason and the Scorchers today? I don't know, but I know where Dinosaur is. I mean, anytime they have a reunion, they're Lou Barlow or Jay Mascis get together and play. It's an event. So, but there was also, I think I told you I had James Brown. I was guarding the stage for him. He bounced his mic stand off the back of my head when he did the splits at one point, and I just felt I was touched by God. You Run DMC. That was an insane show. We had people literally crawling up the outside walls and into the restrooms up on the second floor. Those were huge acts coming to a small town that had, and the place was packed. And then it slowly transitioned more towards dance music, and then a local venue, but not as much as it used to be, because there were also local bands that would play there. There was also a proliferation. At the time I was there in the 80s, there was a lot of, I think I described it as skinny-tied, pogoing new wave guys. A band called The Neats, for instance, was the first show I worked. I watched some poor guy get his hair caught on fire from the fog machine. We had to put him out. But yes, those were the days.
I've always been really interested in what's going on right under my feet, and around, just the sense of people who had been here before, and junk. I'm not really interested in heritage, but I'm interested in junk. Wherever I am, just the things that have kind of been left aside, and the stories that they have to tell. In a nutshell, in the early 18th century, early mid-18th century, Jonathan Edwards, the famous preacher, was stationed over at First Church in Northampton. He also led what was probably the first singing school, and the singing school tradition is something that has continued, at least in the shape note tradition, in parts of the South. It's an unbroken history there. And he bragged that they had, when many other people, most people in New England, white people, were singing in what was called lined out hymnody, just singing, the preacher gives the words out and people sing back in this very kind of mellifluous, ornate way. he bragged that they were singing in 4-part harmony, so they were way ahead of the curve there in Northampton. It's one of the kinds of music that really fed in to all these things. You don't hear about it, but it's sort of bedrock influence on all those kinds of music. It goes, you'll see the judge descending, descending, descending. Oh, you'll see the judge descending on that great day. Oh, Gabriel's going to blow from on high, from on high. Oh, Gabriel's going to blow by and by.
Of Science. E.H.R. Lyman gave to Northampton the Academy of Music, one of the few municipally owned theaters in the United States.
What sort of stands out for you as important about Northampton's history? And I'm thinking particularly, along the lines of the aberrants, that you've mentioned.
Well, that's the thing, is that it's been this continuum, going back historically and looking back in retrospect, of outsiders or an outsider mentality coming into a community and trying to influence that community or be influenced by it. And that's been fairly constant. You go from Jonathan Edwards to Harriet Tubman to anyone in between. And to date and so the community's remained in flux. It's remained in flux politically. One of the things, a huge thing that had a powerful influence on Northampton that people by and large have not taken a lot of stock in, is the Supreme Court decision to no longer hold people who were identified as having mental illness, hold them against their will in institutions. Northampton was home to one of the state hospitals, the large, sprawling state hospital. Many of its citizens worked at the state hospital, and there were a number of people whose family members were in there. But when the Supreme Court discharged a lot of the people out into the community, there really wasn't a lot of support that was offered. It was pretty sharp and immediate. At the same time, you also have the Veterans Hospital, which is another large institution that deals with a spectrum of challenges that veterans, combat and otherwise, have experienced. And they are also introduced or part of the warp and weave of the community. And in that, what happens is that Northampton actually, as a community, developed a certain tolerance. Now, tolerance is a word that makes me crazy, because it usually means someone's holding their nose and enduring something. And I think to some level, for some people, that's true. But then there's tolerance, but more importantly, there was acceptance, which is different. And that happened also historically when you saw the rise of a lesbian community, principally a lesbian community, although the gay community, the LGBTQ community is very strong here. But it was lesbians at the time who had a profound, and still do have a profound influence on Northampton's cultural and sense of self. But all of that echoes and rhymes historically with outsiders, groups who felt ostracized or isolated in the communities that they were being raised in, coming to a place where they could feel comfortable and feel and function and behave as human beings, as opposed to a diagnosis or as opposed to a cultural assignment, but to be as humans. And by and large, I think Northampton does a better job than most communities at that.
Love us as we are, see us and we're holy, in this shall we ever be, holy ourselves. Your love will take us far, praise us and we'll show you from heaven to the glory halls, glorious and free. There are those who think we're wicked, there are those who call us names, depraved, lost and sick, and would rather bathe us in shame. But we put the sin in sincere, we put the do in the doubt. God is perfectly clear, we are perfectly out. Love us as we are, see us and we're holy, in this shall ever be, holy ourselves. Your love will take us far, praise us and we'll show you from heaven to the glory halls, glorious and free.
Mr. Mayor, just what opportunities are there for one in Northampton? Northampton is a beautiful city. Population 25,000. The best of everything. School. The greatest college in the world for women, Smith College, with over 2,000 students. Good roads, sidewalks, bridges, public buildings, and so forth.
Amherst and Northampton were unusual for towns of this size and having a pretty vibrant scene and shows at local Grange halls and here and there. I mean, even out on the town green. That's I think the only time I ever saw Jay's old band play. It was like literally out in, right across from the bank. And it was small, like I think most places were, but it was also a regional draw. So they were kind of larger shows at UMass. I have a nice scarb of my eye from a Black Flag show over there in 1984. Hampshire had some shows. Hampshire College at the Red Barn. There was a couple of folks there, and then there were a number of people who came from other scenes who wound up here.
There was a lot of New York influence. People would come up from New York, and whether it was jazz or blues, and kind of get involved with the music scene in Northampton. And I think there's a lot of outside influence, but this was ripe to accept that and embrace it. And no matter what kind of music you wanted to listen to, there was something here, as well as every other thing that you could possibly want to do in Northampton. Yep. A number of bars in Northampton that would play music, but most of it was up at the Rusty Nail. And I think that the Rusty Nail was very different in that it was so crammed and so tight with people that you would either be at the bar getting a beer, or you'd be standing in this huge crowd and not being able to move, listening to music. Very popular.
Tell me about some of the bands or artists who succeeded in sort of the traditional sense of either getting a record deal or going on a big tour, from who either got their start in the Northampton area or who, are still in the Northampton area?
It depends on how you gauge success in some levels. I mean, the music industry, of course, is fickle. It's as fickle as the people who consume it. But I mean, if you start the most recent, someone like And the Kids, all Northampton school kids who grew up basically somewhat probably in this atmosphere of creativity, and were encouraged by the community. And then you go, Dinosaur Jr., Jay Mascis, and others who, we go to the Pixies, of course. Their start was at UMass, so they didn't necessarily have to grow up here, but at the same time they were here. Going even further back, my God, there's bands like Suicide Commandos, which I don't know if anyone remembers, but they were a hardcore band that got their start here. They used to play Rahars all the time. They went on to greater fame in Minnesota, Minneapolis. Sonic Youth moved here for a specific reason, to start a family. It's interesting that same vibe Jay Mascis never really left. Sonic Youth moved here because of the music energy, and at the same time it gave them a place where they could comfortably raise their daughter. Two members of the Sonic Youth, which was Kim Gordon and Thurston Moore. Ray Mason actually is a local icon. NRBQ, half of NRBQ lived in this area, and then they achieved world fame as essentially a garage band. Their membership started in Kentucky, but they came here at the same time. And they played bars all up and down the Northeast, but this is where they always ended up landing. I knew that you would ask me something like this, and I had a whole list of people queued up, and I can't pull it off right now. But
I mean, that's quite an impressive list already, between Dinosaur Jr., Sonic Youth. I still don't totally understand their level of involvement in this area, other than just the Solid Sound Festival. But then you also have Wilco.
Wilco, yes. Apparently
having like a studio or a record.
Well, they distribute out of East Hampton. Fountains of Wayne. It's slowly coming back.
Archie
Shepp, Yusef Lateef, Aaron McEwen.
Elliott Smith was at Hampshire.
Elliott Smith was at Hampshire, yeah. And in fact actually did some of his better stuff while he was a Hampshire student. Died in LA, but so at some point their feet were damp in the pool here. It's not necessarily that they had to grow up here, or they even stayed here for that matter. But the fact is that there was something about this place that allowed them to feel that they were capable of expressing themselves, and they did.
Not that Catholic, you can be wherever you are. Love us as we are. See us and we're holding this. Shall ever be holy ourselves. Your love will take us far. Praise us and we'll
Hello?
Oh, hello, Eddie. Yes, I am.
Ava, there's something I'd like to say to you.
Well, what is it, Eddie?
Well, I've been here some 2 months now, and I've come to love Northampton. I just can't bear the thought of leaving Northampton.
You don't have to go, Eddie.
You mean?
Yes.
Oh, darling.